Ah, there we go.
Hey, good evening. Let me go sit a bit higher. There we go.
Perfect. Hi, Dan. Good evening. How are you?
Good evening. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for being here this evening.
Sure. Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting
Have
me.
you, cool. Have you ever done the Instagram live session before?
No, this is my very first time. I feel really old right now. Like
All right, Lel, let's make.
I made it in here.
Okay, let's make this a great evening then. Okay, so for everyone who's watching, and I'll repeat this occasionally for all those who will be joining later on. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat or post them on Slack, and then Johan will publish them here, and we'll get your questions answered. So Dan, before we dive into the questions, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you've done, and what you do today?
Sure. My name is Daan Weddepohl. I'm the founder of Peerby, a website that enables you to borrow the things you need from others in your neighborhood. And what did I do today? I was in lots and lots of meetings about everything from stand-up meetings to customer feedback sessions to design sessions to a meeting about how to get talent from abroad into the Netherlands. How's my connection, by the way? Am I coming through loud and clear?
Well, I'm losing you a few seconds once in a while, but for now it's okay. If anyone has issues following Dan, let us know in the chat, and we'll get this fixed. All right, so thanks for the introduction. You mentioned Peerby, of course, and we saw that this isn't your first company. Yeah, if that's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your previous entrepreneurial experience?
Sure. The first time, well, let me start by saying this. I think as as a child, I already wanted to create stuff. Like I was always designing things and thinking about how to build, airplanes or time machines or fortresses or tunnels or whatever. And I think that's really sort of the thing that has been driving me as an entrepreneur as well. And my first company I started when I was probably 19 or 20. And it wasn't back then I considered it a real company. But nowadays I would say it was just freelancing. I started my eenmanszaak, and that's how I got started.
Hmm.
Um, just selling my hours and working, basically doing owning my job instead of having a job. Um, and then the second company I started was called Entic, and that was a software company. And that's quite a fun story, actually. I had worked for a while at a big multinational, and I noticed there that there was actually that there I was supposed to maintain some software there, and after I was doing that for a few months, I realized that you could probably cut that all of that software and not lose any functionality at the company. So it was like very
Yeah.
complicated network software, and I discovered that it's like €1 million worth of software licenses, and nobody's actually using any of the functionality. So things happening in between the sort of the source and the destination, and then there was all this stuff happening. And in the, well, anyway, so the company that I tried to start was by basically saying, well, I think I can do what that software does a lot better, and it'll actually have functionality, and we can cut all of the licenses that you're paying for. And
Hmm.
that's how I tried to start that company. I tried to sell my solution to the multinational. They never bought it, but in the process, I had to find someone to work with for software development. I had to find a sales partner. So the whole company was basically set up, and then we kind of pivoted into making custom software for like marketing. And yeah, that's what we did for a couple of years. And I sold the company. And then I decided it was time for something completely different. And I became an actor.
That is something completely different. Anything that we might recognize you from?
Well, I think my my most famous role is Officer Mollema in Goede Tijden, Slechte Tijden.
Ah.
Yeah, but no, I don't think anybody knows that. No, but every now and then when someone needed to be arrested or interrogated, I would show up and make sure that yeah, that what's the GTS town called was safe again.
Nice. Okay, so eventually you decided to go for Peerby. So how did that come up? How did you start with Peerby?
Oh dear. Hey, how about I try and switch to non-Wi-Fi? How does that sound?
Yeah, definitely. Let's try that.
Yeah, I hope this is better. Oh, I think this is already much better. Sorry, so could you
It
repeat your
looks
last
like it.
question?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how did you start with Peerby then?
Many years ago, there was a fire in my house, and my house kind of burned down. I mean, that's the short explanation. There was lots of fire damage, so I didn't have a roof. I didn't have any of my stuff. At the same time, I lost my job, and the lease car that came with the job, and my relationship, and it was like everything at the same time sort of collapsed. And that kind of forced me to go from being very independent to being way more interdependent. And I realized that I had always kind of feared to be interdependent. But when it happened, and I realized this is actually quite beautiful. It's if you dare to ask for help and stay with sleep on people's couches and borrow their stuff, you discover that it's great for strengthening relationships, and also that most people are very willing to help out and to share. And I think this is what started it. And
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, I had to restock my house, and I realized that I was going to spend thousands of euros on stuff that I had hardly ever used, and it was probably hardly ever going to use again. So I figured there's got to be a better way.
Yeah. So how did you figure out it was not just you? Like, how do you figure out there were other people who had the same ideas?
Yeah. Well, we weren't sure, and whenever I pitched it, everybody said it was crazy and nobody wanted to share. So there was an interesting dilemma there. And I would say the best way to prove it is in practice. And I think I first ran some experiments. I tried to do some lean experiments. I created this one-page website with a form that said, "Would you like to borrow or rent something?" And then, "What would you like to borrow or rent?" And then people could hit like start,
Mm-hmm.
and it looked like maybe then something was going to happen. But instead, they would get a message that said, "Sorry, this doesn't exist yet, but as soon as it does, you'll be the first to know." And that's sort of how we validated the first idea, and it converted. People filled it out, and back then I considered that enough proof that there
Yeah.
was something to it.
Yeah. So then I can imagine, especially marketplaces are generally tricky when it comes to finding a business model, because of course you can find supply and demand can already be difficult, but then of course how do you not stop the transaction from happening, and how do you keep the transactions on your platform and so forth? So how did you find the business model that works, or at Peerby, or does it work?
Oh gosh, it's we finally found a model that seems to be working quite well. I'm gonna knock on wood, because it's I mean, it's close to being profitable for us, but we're still not there. Yeah, so in the early days, like we kind of followed Facebook's example. We just said the business model. Who needs a business model? We'll just grow first. And nowadays, I'm not so sure if that was the best strategy. I think it would have probably been a good idea to try and validate the business model, and then maybe not implement it everywhere yet and grow first. But we sort of kept it open, and we're like, well, we'll figure it out at some point,
Mm-hmm.
which I think was quite risky. So then, but we always thought it was going to be probably around insuring the transactions, because a lot of people, the first thing when they heard about Peerby, the first thing they would ask was, what if something breaks? And so I figured there's something around that safety and that, you know, certainty that we can help organize.
Yeah.
But just saying insurance doesn't mean you already know the business model. That's very interesting. That's something I learned along the way. There's probably a million ways that you could implement insurance. And the first few ways that we did it, it was terrible, and it just didn't function as a business model. You could say in a way that today our business model is also that we provide a warranty against breaking things or losing things. But the way we've implemented it has changed so much over the years that now it is our business model. And at first it seemed like it could never. But yeah, it was, I would say, trial and error. That's the answer. You come up with assumptions, you try and test them as quickly as possible. And even, I would say, test the ones that you think might be unlikely but very promising. That's how we came to our latest and our best functioning model, which is a subscription. So we charge a little fee every month to our members on the demand side, so people that want to borrow something, and that works very well.
All right, nice. Okay, so here's a question from the audience, from the Pillar family. How did you get people to your first website? You know, when you had just a landing page?
Yeah. So the very first landing page, I think back then I combined a bunch of things. I used one of those Google AdWords coupons that you get with magazines. You would get like, you know, 50 or 20 euros of free AdWords, or I don't forgot how much it was. I think I posted it on Facebook and Twitter, but saying something like, "Oh, look what I found! Check it out." So not like, "This is my child. Please do not say anything about it because I will cry." But you know, say something and don't say anything mean about it. And that got the first traffic to that landing page. Yeah.
All right, so that always helps. You know, already some questions in the chat about the crowdfunding campaign. Of course, you know, you did a crowdfunding campaign. I think your target was initially around 300K. Eventually, you raised around 2 million. So it's, I mean, nearly 7 times the amount. So how did you come up with the idea of a crowdfunding campaign, or who did? You know, and what do you think made the campaign so successful?
Yeah. When we did the crowdfunding, we already had a big reach. So we had a lot of people already using the platform, and we had like our social media channels and our mailing list. So we knew how to reach people. I think that's something that is often underestimated. Like people think, "Oh, I'll just put it on the platform, and then the platform gets all the attention." Maybe nowadays that's slightly more true, but certainly then, you really, if you don't have reach, it's going to be hard to crowdfund, I think. So but we had that, and we had, at that point, we had found a business model, and we saw rapid growth, and we thought, well, this is it. In hindsight, it wasn't it, but that's where we were at that moment. It looked like a safe enough bet, and before we didn't have any business model, so it also felt a bit risky to tell a crowd, "Why don't you invest in this?" Even though we don't know how we were going to make money. Which, by the way, is always the case. I think any investment in a startup is going to be extremely risky. This is for the other side of the people that are going to invest in crowdfunding. Be aware. And why did it become successful? I think the reason it worked so well is because we validated and we tested the story with an audience. So we invited groups of people over, like once or twice a week, and while we were preparing for the crowdfunding, and I would basically pitch them and then ask them, are you going to invest? How much are you going to invest? Why are you going to invest? Why not? What information is lacking? And every week I would use that feedback and put that into a new version. And that way we sort of developed it into something that resonated very much with our audience. And it's not that the core of what we were doing changed, but we discovered how to best tell the story, and what words help people really understand and helps them resonate. So we found that people really sort of got excited when we talked about I think a kantelen. So that's like finding a tipping point, tipping the economy towards smarter consumption. And then when you find those kinds of words and you see like lights go on in people's eyes, you're like, ah, right. So this is how we should explain it. This is what gets people excited.
Ah, nice. Cool. So in the meantime, again, for everyone who's watching, feel free to post your questions in the comments. I see a lot of them stopping by already, so I'll make sure to get those answered later on. Again, talking about the crowdfunding campaign, you offered a convertible loan to the investors, and again, that was around 2 million in total. So first of all, can you elaborate a little bit about what is a convertible loan and why did you choose for this option?
Sure.
And secondly, of course, if you're willing to share, what did you do with the money?
Okay, so what is a convertible loan and why did we choose that option? That was the first part, right?
Yeah.
So a convertible loan basically means that you are borrowing money, and at some point that amount of money is supposed to convert into shares. So you don't give out shares straight away, but there's a period of time where it's a loan, and then they turn into shares. And usually the reason you do this is because it's hard to value a company at that point in time. So if you're not sure how to value a company, then a convertible note might be a way to sort of postpone that, and then let professional investors decide what the actual value is. And then the people that hold a loan note usually get a discount on their shares, and there's some interest that builds up over time that also converts into shares. So that's what it is. You also ask why. So when it's hard to find the valuation, and then what did we do with the money? Well, I'll be honest with you. So when we raised that money, we thought we figured it out. This is the business model. It's growing exponentially. We're making money. The unit economics are working. So every transaction is profitable, and it's an upward curve. We're there. Let's scale this. Let's bring this to other cities. Let's bring this to other countries. So we had this whole roadmap of London, New York, Los Angeles, and that's what we wanted to spend the money on. And we started doing that. So we started expanding to other cities. Like a lot of cities in the Netherlands. And then we started to see something sort of worrying. So the exponential curve sort of turned into an S curve, like it started to flatten. And what we hadn't realized is that we're a long tail marketplace, meaning if you're in car sharing, then it's cars. We do hundreds, if not thousands, of different types of products. And all those products have slightly different characteristics. And we figured all the products are sort of the same, so we just keep adding more and more and more, and then it'll, and then we scale. What we didn't realize is that in a way, we had cherry-picked the first products in high volume in supply, high volumes in demand, nice acquisition prices on both sides, fulfillment really worked well. And as we started scaling beyond sort of the products that were in that sweet spot, suddenly, all of a sudden, it wasn't working so well anymore. So acquisition costs got higher. The fulfillment didn't work so well anymore, and the volumes didn't match. Like not enough supply, etc. So it was getting harder and harder to create profitable new sort of products. So instead of doing this, we went like that, and then we still tried to sort of execute on the plan, and we said, well, maybe we can replicate it to New York or Los Angeles because it's a much bigger area, so maybe we won't have these problems. So we did customer research there, and we ran a pilot, and we had to conclude after a while this is not going to work this way.
Yeah.
So and we had some money left, so we decided that we needed to figure out or think really hard about, like, can this still work in some other way? And we thought it really hard. We tried a whole bunch of things, ran all kinds of experiments, and at some point we had a hunch, like this we still believe this is the future. So and this might be the model. So let's try it. And then so we changed a whole bunch of things, launched a new platform, and just in time sort of pulled the plane up from its like going down. Barely,
and that's been how long ago?
This I think that pivot that was about 2.5 years ago. And
all right.
we're now in a better financial position than we've ever been. But we got some we have some scars, you could say.
All right, so one last question about the crowdfunding campaign. So why, another one from the audience, why not stick with a loan? So why have them as convertibles?
Well, I guess a loan needs to be repaid, right? And if you make huge amounts of money in the early days, then I guess that's fine, especially if you raise big amounts. But if you wanna continue growing, you want to invest your money into growth, and maybe you want to raise even more money, then I would say it's better to convert to shares, so you have more sort of runway, more time to grow. But it really depends. People that give you the loan, then go with that. I think that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, let's see how this is going. Yeah, all right, perfect. Okay, so there's another one from the audience, and so this is recognizable, especially it's regarding your name, or at least the name of the company. Back in days, like I think I heard about your company the first time like 5 or 6 years ago. So I was like, is it Peerby or Peerby? So you mentioned already that it's Peerby. So if you could start over, would you change the name, or what did you do to teach the public to pronounce it correctly?
We haven't. In fact, I've given up, and I think it's both correct. So you can also say Peerby.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No. At some point I got pretty frustrated about it, and I thought maybe I should just change their name to Peer, and I tried to buy Peer.com, and then people told me, but that could be spelled P-E-E-R and P-E-A-R and P-I-E-R, basically every possible spelling. And then I figured, okay, maybe it's fine. It's some people say Nike, others say Nike. They're doing great, so I'll just stick with it.
Nice.
We even changed it internally a couple times how we pronounce it, so it's fine. You can say it any way you like.
As long as people go to the website and start working with it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the current business model, if I'm correctly, is people pay a certain amount to rent something through your website, and then you take a certain fee.
Well, the main business model is actually a small subscription for people that are borrowing or renting, and so there is indeed, if we charge some amount to the persons that are renting out their items, but in essence, people can share for free once they are a member of the platform, and in return.
Yeah, I was just. Yeah. That's perfect. Yeah, no, sorry to interrupt, but I was just wondering because, of course, if you do a financial transaction, then of course you act as a financial marketplace as well, and then of course you need to comply with the what is it? The new banking rule.
PSD2.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you have that as well, or? Yeah.
Yeah, we luckily we've been working with a payment provider that has all that stuff figured out.
Okay,
And
so you can name drop for now. Who is it?
okay, well, yeah, we use Mango Pay, so that's
All right,
they
cool.
specialize in marketplaces and like crowdfunding platforms. So yeah, that
Nice.
helps a
Okay, so
lot. Yeah.
that's good to know. I can imagine that other people have the same problem. Okay,
Hmm.
let me see if there are other questions in the meantime. No. All right, cool. So again, for everyone who's watching, feel free to drop your questions in the comments. So a little bit about other stuff. What you do outside of Peerby, of course. You're also a mentor, or at least you were a mentor at other accelerators.
Hmm.
Looking at other startups and especially early stage startup founders, what do you think are key qualities of great startup founders?
Key qualities of great startup founders. Um, so I'm one of the sort of startup accelerators I work with is the Founder Institute, and they actually do this psychological test as part of the like sort of
Okay, I hope it's just me. Okay, we're trying to get Daan back in here. All right. Well, it was interesting so far, so let's see how we can get him back. It happens so many times. Ah, there we go. Okay, Daan, waiting for you to accept the live request.
yes.
Yes, awesome.
All right. Well,
All
now this
right.
time I switched to another Wi-Fi connection. Let's see. Oh
All
boy.
right. All right. So talking about what are key characteristics of great startup founders, and you mentioned the Founder Institute and the personality test they do.
Yeah, yeah. So they found a correlation between something called fluid intelligence and good entrepreneurs. And what it means basically is taking quickly acquiring new knowledge and then applying that to maybe a completely new field. So it's like, I guess it's so if I would have to think about like what are the qualities that I see in other entrepreneurs and that I think help me be an entrepreneur, it's quickly grasping a concept and then applying it to what you're working on and being flexible in a way. So if you need to figure something out, then not be afraid to like, oh, I don't know how this works. Let's forget about it. But
Mm-hmm.
to figure it out quickly and then also adapt to the circumstances. So maybe you run into a problem, you learn about it quickly, you find a solution or a different way than maybe you originally planned to do things, and you keep going. That I think that's maybe in the essence of entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Nice. All right. So
Yeah.
that's a good thing to consider. You are also part of a batch, in one or multiple startup accelerators, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
what did you get out of it, and what was, let's say, the most valuable asset, or most valuable part of being part of such a program?
Yeah. It's a stack of things that you get. So I think that's really there's not one thing that you get out of it. There's multiple things, and it differs, I think, per stage and per type of accelerator. So for example, the Founder Institute that we joined really helped me go from 0 to 1 in all aspects of the business. So I wasn't really knowledgeable about how to start a scalable, funded digital company, with a global potential. That's sort of their sweet spot, and they do really well at explaining to you how, what you need to do, what are the steps, how does funding work, and sort of get every topic in place, sort of in a sort of minimal version, like minimal version of your business plan, of your pitch, of your marketing plan, etc. So that was great to get from that 0 to 1. Then we joined Rockstart, and I think what that did is it really gave us, sort of connected us to a network of mentors and a network of investors. It had this demo day that was, well visited by investors and press, and so we got a lot of buzz going. We got attention from people that could fund us, that could help us achieve certain things, and so that's why and there's this external drive that helps, that combined with your internal motivation really pushes you forward, right? Like, you have this demo day, you need to have something to present to the audience by the end of the program, so you better work your ass off to have something. And then sometimes there's accelerators that are like, we were in Techstars London that are really helpful for sort of getting the international network. So I built an amazing network in the UK and in the US thanks to that program. And yeah, they're connected. The way they are connected is just amazing. So I remember being in New York, reaching out to the director of the London program, saying, hey, I would love to talk to, I think it was Union Square Ventures, and he sent an email, and an hour later they said, okay, come by at our office tomorrow, and I did it, and I pitched. So that's a very, that's an amazing kind of network to have with that kind of credibility. So it's different in every phase, I guess. The right answer.
Did you already, talking about the mentors and coaches specifically, did you always have people around you who helped you out with advice, or told you what to do, or not told you what not to do?
Yes, and at some point, this is, I would say, yes, obviously, and the first thing that comes to mind when you say that is that I learned an amazing amount from all these people, and also at some point you can have too much advice. Sometimes you just need to put your head down and do the work, and I also learned that it's very good to understand where the advice is coming from. So I think the best mentors are the mentors that know that they don't know something, or that they have a very different view on things. And actually, one of the mentors that helped me the most was I think it was a German VC. And the moment we sat down and I explained what we did, he said, "Oh, then do not take any advice from me, because I focus on business to business companies. I like reduced risk. So he just gave me this list of things that were not us.
Yeah.
And then I realized, so you shouldn't be listening to everyone. You should be listening to, the folks that have specific knowledge about your area, or the investors that specifically invest in your type of business. Yeah. If you want to, take the right advice and not just all advice, because you're going to have to make a selection, because you often get like two people saying the completely opposite thing, and then you have to decide, who am I going to listen to?
Definitely. Funny thing that you mentioned, you talked about, putting in the hours, doing the actual work, at the same time, and you even found a time to publish a book. How did that happen? And of course, take some time to promote the book. Of course, tell us what it's about.
Here it is.
But you're also a startup founder. So how did you find the time to write a book?
So that's quite a funny story. So at some point, basically I was offered a book deal, and so they said, would you like to write a book? And I said, I don't have time to write a book. And then they said, well, we'll get you a ghostwriter, and then it won't be any, you know, will be easy, we'll just do a couple of interviews and then you have a book. That was a lie. Right, at least, no, maybe, I think it might be possible if you don't really care what's in the book. But like, I did an interview with someone who was good at writing, and they wrote down, you know, this sort of a few chapters, and then I read it, and I was like, that's not what I want to write. If I'm gonna publish a book, then it should be, you know, should really represent what happens and how I think about things, and etc. So I ended up working every holiday on my book. Just basically, if I wasn't working on Peerby, then I was in a little cabin in the woods, typing on my laptop. And yeah, that's how this book got done eventually. 99 reasons to quit, but to persevere anyway. 99 redenen om te stoppen en toch door te gaan.
All right, so you know, the title kind of gives it away, of course, but what is it about, and what can people learn from it?
Yeah, it's about this pivotal moment that I just described, where we thought we had it, we thought we knew where we were going, and then we had to really work really hard to turn things around and figure out how to save the company. Yeah. And that's also, in a way, it's a funny story, because when they offered the book deal, it was everything was looking bright. So basically they said, why didn't you write a book about how to build a great startup? And then you know, everything sort of went to shit. Sorry, excuse me.
We're not in the US, so you can say those kind of things.
And but I still had this book deal. I was like, am I really gonna write a book about how to, you know, build a great company? I think I just gonna have to be either quit, you know, cancel this deal, or really write what's going on. And in a way, I was kind of happy, because when I just started the business, I always thought, I don't wanna be that person, that entrepreneur who's always saying everything's great, we're nailing it, is, you know, no problem at all, we're doing perfect, when the reality is the real, you know, story inside most startups is it's really hard. You're emotionally broken, you know, you don't know what to do, you're desperate, everybody's like trying to figure out, everybody's panicking, and then somehow you figure out how to get through that and how to build something. And it's like, yeah, that's the real story behind the startup. So I was, in a way, I was kind of happy that I by accident got a chance to share that story instead of the you know, happy joy.
All right, so now you know, you went into let's say new path. So how's Peerby looking now? So you mentioned you're not yet profitable, but you know, do you have some channels that you think might get you there? You know, where do you see Peerby heading in the next 2 years?
In the next 2 years, let me start with the very long term, because I think they say that startup entrepreneurs are really good at the very long term and the very short term, and very bad at the everything in between. I think I'm sort of the same way. I think where we see ourselves is the company that's going to help basically the world to transition to a more sustainable way of using consumer goods, household items. You know, there's a better way than buying, and that's what we'll do. We'll create a Netflix for stuff, if you will. Yeah. And how we're going to get there is, in a way, is still a question. So even though we are pretty far along, and I would say we're one of the big pioneers in the space, nobody really knows what it's going to be like. And so we see these incredible channels that we you know, might be using to scale, and that we're exploring, and we might have ideas and a vision about how that's going to pan out. We think it will be hyper local, combined with centralized warehousing. But the reality is nobody really knows. And I think this is this is also something I love to kind of share, and sometimes I'm a bit afraid to share because people seem to think you're sort of a like it always feels like you have to pretend that you know everything, right? You know exactly how you're going to do things and how you're going to get there. I think the reality is, you just have to try. You have to try many things and figure out what works. We have all kinds of hypotheses, and most of them turn out to be wrong, and then we do something else, and that's in the end what gets us there. And I'm watching this show on Dutch TV called Vliegende Hollander, so Flying Dutchman, and it's about the early days of KLM. And I mean, nowadays I think KLM is a pretty boring business, and they're also, all the carbon emissions, etc. So it's not. But in the early days, you can really see the startup vibes there. They don't know how they're going to make money. They're like, are we going to are we really going to make money by flying people around? Are there even enough people that want to fly? Let's combine it with mail. Maybe that is profitable.
Yeah.
And they have all these questions, and they don't know, and they're all figuring it out. And then they invent pressure. Could be in pressurized airplanes. It's all, and they have all the crashes, and it's very recognizable, I think, as a startup founder.
Yeah.
And it's funny to see that these big companies also at some point were pioneers who had to figure out, does this even work?
A long time ago.
Yeah. People even want to fly.
So time's almost up, but there's two last questions that I like to ask you. Of course, the last, let's say, 8 months have been different for almost everyone. So how have you done in the last 8 months, and what has changed for your company?
Yeah. So before Corona, I had this ambition to take the whole company online, tell everybody, work from wherever you want, and we'll give you a co-working subscription. And I don't care whether you're in Tokyo, in Amsterdam, or in New York, or Havana. You go figure it out where you want to do this. And so I canceled our office, gave everyone that subscription, and then everybody showed up at 9 o'clock in the morning every day at this one co-working space in Amsterdam.
And when was this?
This is 2.5, probably right in the middle of the pivot somewhere. Like
all right.
2 years, like right after sort of the deepest. We were starting to go back up again. It's like let's change it. So, in a way, I discovered that a lot of people love the social aspects of work, and they kind of want to be together. So to me, this sounded like a dream come true. It's like everybody wants to work like this. But it did mean that we tried all these techniques to work remotely. Like, we had the tools in place. We could do all the video calls because we were still setting it up to be sort of a remote organization. And so when Corona hit, basically we were used to it, and I guess we spent no more days at the office, but it didn't feel like that big of a change when it came to work. The only thing that I think is still hard is the brainstorm sessions. Like I have a whiteboard here that I sometimes put up behind me so that I can still sort of replicate the old school brainstorms. But yeah, I think we're very lucky that we had already accidentally prepared for this new world.
So nothing new with regards to customer acquisition or those kind of things?
Well, I mentioned the whole long tail aspect, right? So that we have hundreds of different of types of products that are on the marketplace. Turns out that sometimes that can also be a benefit and not just hurt you, because we're so diversified in the types of products that even though obviously party gear rental is gone, it's just, that's zero now. It's only a small part of what we do, and we saw that the DIY, so the home improvement, went up by lots and lots. So it's in the end it all sort of evened each other out, and so our channels are still the same, but the types of products that are coming in are quite different. So I feel like we're quite lucky, and we had some difficult puzzles to figure out, but some of our cons then turned into pros in this situation.
Nice. All right.
Yeah.
So, well, as I mentioned in the beginning, thank you so much for joining us this evening. As I mentioned, I have one last question, and this is one question we ask all of our speakers. So, what is your biggest fuck up? What lessons have you learned from it? And what can you share? What can you tell? Okay, don't do this or do this to make your life a lot easier.
Yeah. Oh gosh. You actually prepared me for this question, and I still don't have like one fuck up. I think it's a there's a pile of huge mistakes I made, um, and there's that we're not dead. So in a way, you could say I didn't make any fatal mistakes yet that I'm aware of. So none of them are big enough to kill us.
Hmm.
And I think the reality of a startup is probably that you're stacking things. You're improving something by 1% every day, and in the end that stacks up to building something great. I think with fuck ups it might be the same way. If you mess something up 1% every day, if your netto result is -1%, then in the end you'll probably kill the business. I wonder if there's ever one business really that is just dies because of one thing. There's probably
Hmm.
maybe there's a few, but I think in the end a lot of startups might actually die because first there's this and then there's that and then maybe
Yeah.
they don't maybe their business model wasn't great and then maybe they don't pivot enough and then maybe the people get kind of demotivated and then maybe they run out of funding and it's sort of this whole thing that stacks up.
So
um,
preventing fatal fuck ups from happening is actually just accepting that something's wrong and moving on with the things that do.
I would say so. Yeah, pivot away from all the things that you fucked up, and then in the end, it wasn't a fuck up. It was just an experiment, right? So
Yeah.
I would say the biggest fuck up, and maybe that's been then my biggest fuck up is if every time I spend too much money on fucking up. I think fucking up is great, but try to do it as quickly as possible so you can learn from it,
Yeah.
and then do the right thing.
Nice.
And yeah, so I guess I guess we can look at our bookkeeping and see what was the biggest investment that was a
Yeah.
waste of money, and that was my biggest fuck
Yeah.
up.
All right. So one additional question then. Sorry, this topic is very interesting.
Yeah.
So how do you decide to take risks versus what you already know? Because there's of course a balance between how much you can learn and how much you
Hmm.
have to spend between risk and what you already know.
Yeah. Well, I would say when I think about a business model, then I think that the things that you already know are sort of pieces of a puzzle where you already kind of know these are probably in the right place. Maybe it's
Hmm.
a little bit up, little bit down. You have this puzzle with 1,000 pieces. This is probably the sky. And so it's pretty good. If you have a piece of that puzzle where you have no clue what it's supposed to look like and where it's supposed to go, then I think that's the area where you want to take risks and you want to try big things. And I feel like a lot of people want to get it right the first time and therefore invest way too much money and too much time in that first puzzle piece. I think it's more important that you put that puzzle piece somewhere as quickly as possible and then discover it doesn't fit. And I think that first investment, when based on your gut feeling of what is perfect, is almost
Hmm.
always wrong. So yeah, take risk there. Just throw it in, and then you start learning. And I think the biggest risk that people are taking is often the opposite of that what they think the risk is. They think their risk is damaging their image, so they
Hmm.
want to get it perfect. I say that the only companies that have to worry really about damaging their image are the companies that have acquired all the customers that exist already, and they will
Yeah.
never be able to acquire a new customer. If you have one customer, then I mean it's gonna hurt a little bit, but if you piss them off, you're gonna find another customer and try it again in a better way. So that's the real risk that you don't try, I would
All
say.
right. Awesome. All right, sounds good. Thank you so much again for joining us this evening. Again,
Thanks for
Daan
having me.
Weddepohl, founder of Peerby, so at least or Peerby, whatever
Yeah,
the
whatever you
audience
prefer.
prefers. All right. Again, thank you so much. To the audience, this was the second to last Ask Me Anything for StartupLeap. As I mentioned, we'll be continuing the Ask Me Anythings on our Utrecht Think account after this journey ends. Join us next week for the last one with Caroline Glasbergen, founder of New Female Leaders. Again, thanks and have a great evening.
Thanks for your questions. Have a good night.